box that I'm trying to get rid of. I'm not sure it's meant to be Q&A mode actually. There we go. I think we're meant to be on the listen mode at the minute. Can you still hear me now? And then we'll start going through the slides. Excellent. Right, that's fine. Okay, well, welcome to this webinar, and thank you very much for taking an hour out of your time on a Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully you've had a busy but not too busy start to the year, and hopefully you all had quite restful, peaceful Christmas and New Year. Seems like a long time ago now. Mine certainly does. I've been back to work for a couple of weeks, and it feels like holidays never happened. So today's topic was developing a wellness plan for your funeral staff. But actually it's easily as much about developing a wellness plan for ourselves, because at the end of the day, if we don't look after ourselves, then who will? And as part of that, of course, we are able to look after our staff as part of what we do. So really I'm thinking about gaining and retaining our mental well-being one day at a time. Now I don't know how you were last year, but certainly over the course of the year I tend to find that my mental well-being ebbs and flows a little bit, depending on a variety of factors really, including workload, family issues, the weather. I live in the Lake District. The weather is challenging sometimes. So far so good. Over the last winter, obviously we had 2 or 3 fairly serious issues from 2015 and 2016 and 2017, where actually we were faced with some really serious weather issues and flooding and so on, which I did find really did affect my own mental well-being. So I think there are lots of things that do impact on us, and it's whether or not we're able to recognise some of these things, and also put in a plan really to help us to manage stuff. So why bother? Why bother? Why? And SAFE are very good actually at talking about mental wellness, about well-being, about mental health. Why are we even bothering thinking about this stuff? Well, in layman's terms, which I tend to say a lot to people, if your mental well-being isn't great, actually neither's the rest of your life generally. You are pretty stuffed. If you're in a really bad place mentally, it's very difficult to be in a really good place in other ways. It's not impossible, because we see all the time celebrities who have great success, mainly because they've got the support of other people around them and maybe great talents as well. But actually, if our mental health isn't that good, the rest of our lives are affected as well. So good mental well-being is pretty fundamental to life, and it's a fundamental part of enjoying and appreciating life as it comes and it goes. And life's not always easy, of course it isn't. And certainly at work, we don't always expect things to be straightforward. But when we've got good mental well-being, we can be more productive, more resilient to those challenges that we inevitably face. The losses, the bereavements, the challenges, financial challenges, health challenges, family challenges. We can be a little bit more resilient to some of these challenges. I'm not sure what Angela or Claire in the office is doing, but they're giving me some lovely yellow dots on the PowerPoint, so that's quite fun, keep you entertained. We're also able to be more creative. Again, it's very difficult when you're mired, maybe in a pit of mental ill health, where it's very difficult to appreciate the good things that are out there, to look to the future, to really think about what we would like to do and how we would like to be. It's very difficult to do all of that when we're feeling down and we're not ourselves. So actually, creativity tends to run with periods of good mental health, and we tend to be at our most creative when we've got good mental health. Again, there are always exceptions to the rule. I'm sure you've heard of artists and all kinds of people who've had terrible mental health, but still creative works of genius. I think they're pretty few and far between though. Quite importantly as well, and I think all of us in terms of our work lives, wanting to reach our full potential, wanting to get as far up that slippery ladder as you want to, or really wanting to fulfill those ambitions, those dreams that we might find ourselves with. And actually, again, if we're not feeling ourselves, if we're not feeling great, it's very difficult to reach that full potential and to actually stretch ourselves to be able to reach our full potential. And likewise, able to make meaningful contributions to our friends, our families, our communities. When we're not feeling great mentally, we tend to close down a little bit, we tend to avoid social situations, we tend to give less of ourselves than when we're feeling calm, appreciated, on an even keel, and good, generally speaking. So all of those things are pretty important, I think, to most of us. Is that the case, do you think? I think being productive, resilient, creative, able to reach my potential, and actually able to do meaningful things with the people that I care about are all really important to me, and I suspect they probably are to most people. What we do know, and certainly from previous webinars and previous training courses and all the things we've talked about previously in SAFE, are that guys who do jobs like yourselves, first responders, people who are dealing with difficult situations, actually have more propensity towards stress-related illness and low mental well-being. People who see and deal with traumatic situations, people who deal with death and dying day in, day out, are slightly more at risk than the general population. And you'll certainly have seen that borne out in the news in recent months, with things like GP suicide rates really starting to hit the headlines, and actually people beginning to realise that those in frontline roles, those who are dealing with people in difficulties, are much more likely to suffer from a stress-related illness. And as part of that, as part of a stress-related illness, or as part of cumulative stress over a long period of time, actually we are more likely to develop a long-term mental health problem, which is really what we're all trying to avoid in the great scheme of things. Mental health problems don't need to be a really major issue for lots of us, but actually they can be, and they can seriously impact on our abilities to do our jobs, to live our lives, and to appreciate all of the good things that are around us. Hi Chris, nice to see you. So just a very quick trot really through the prevalence of stress and what we're talking about. That slide doesn't come out very well with the blue. It actually says almost, oh good grief, I don't know what's going on with that at all, it's gone a bit crazy. Almost 3/4 of people, 74%, you can guess at that one, felt at some point last year that they were so stressed that they were unable to cope, which I think is actually really quite shocking. We come across that, obviously we run helplines here at Professional Help, and we do come across many people every day who feel that they are near to breaking point. But actually that statistic of almost 3/4 of us at some point last year felt so stressed that we were unable to cope, I think is quite a shocking statistic. And also 1/3 of people in Britain have experienced suicidal feelings. This is research by the New Economics Foundation. What we do know is that the suicide rate is still very high. There are almost 6,000 people every year who do complete suicide, and of those, 75% of them or thereabouts are men. So when I go about doing my tours with SAFE and with other bits of work, talking to people who tell me that they are very resilient, they are mentally robust, they take care of themselves, that's great. But quite a lot of the time those people are men. But actually statistically men are far more likely to complete suicide. And this is something we need to be mindful of, particularly when people are telling us, no, we're okay, no, we can cope, we're just going to get on with it, I'm not going to think about this. Actually, these can be some of our warning signs. Again, hospital admissions data from not very long ago pointed to around 17,500 episodes of people being admitted into hospital where stress or anxiety was the primary cause, however that manifested itself. That leads to a lot of days where people are in hospital taking up space, taking up beds, and being looked after because of the prevalence of stress or anxiety and our inability to otherwise deal with some of the situations in which we find ourselves and be able to respond proactively and positively to try to manage our stress. Again, these things have huge costs to the taxpayer, something we're always concerned about, but really at the end of the day, I think what we need to be more concerned about is the human cost of stress, and the fact that actually there's a good number of us, if we look around at any given moment in time, who are struggling, whether or not we admit it. Most of you who have seen me speak before about stress, I'm not going to labour these points, will have heard a lot of the impacts of stress. But actually stress impacts on us in and out of the office. It impacts in life and at work. And some of those physiological stresses, the muscle tensions, the sore shoulders or the backs, the headaches, panic. We hear a lot on our helplines, people who are suffering from panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and actually these can feel incredibly frightening. Many a time people will say to me, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack, I feel like I'm going to die when I have a panic attack. Now the good news is almost never, in fact probably never, do people die when they are having these panic attacks. It just feels like you are, it feels like a distinct possibility, but statistically you are not likely to die through a panic attack. But it's a deeply unpleasant, awful sensation that it's very hard to work out of, because they are a little bit of a vicious circle. Once you have one, you are afraid of having the next one, which makes you more likely to have the next one, and so on and so on. So these kinds of things can be a real problem. And actually some serious physical problems. It does say heart issues on there, digestive problems, libido problems. There are some real physical fallouts from people's stress. The obvious ones that we know about rises in depression, insomnia and sleep problems, higher blood pressure, weaker immune system, and actually the things that we're more likely to see, things like we're more likely to suffer from anxiety, which is a genuinely dreadful set of symptoms, restlessness, anger, emotional outbursts, people who fly off the handle at the slightest provocation, quite often demonstrating their stress. Substance abuse might not be to the extent of being serious drug abuse, but certainly might be reliance on prescription drugs for sleeping. It might be alcohol or recreational drugs, whatever it might be, and withdrawing socially. All of these things are physiological effects of stress on ourselves. And how it affects us in the workplace, it leads to strained relationships. Clearly, it's very difficult to deal with somebody who is angry or upset or unpredictable or impatient, irritable. All of these things might be someone, not most of us, most of the time. And if it is, actually, this should be ringing some warning bells. And it leads to strained relationships. Very hard to work with people who are always stressed out, or always hypervigilant, or always snapping for one reason or another. The inability to focus, I think it's one we're all quite good, or I'm certainly quite good at hiding, that actually we hide our inability to focus behind multitasking. And one of the things I'm going to talk a little bit about later on is about noise. And by noise, I don't mean music or sounds in the office or anything like that. I mean the kind of noise that takes up your headspace, whether that is stuff on the internet, social media, which I'm a criminal for and spend a lot of time doing social media stuff for work and for fun. Relationships that occupy your headspace that aren't particularly good for you. And actually we hide a lot of our inability to focus behind being busy, multitasking, but actually we're not getting on with what we should be getting on with. And that doubles our stress, because actually our inability or poor focus then leads us to not completing the tasks that we need to complete, whether it's at work or in life generally, which then doubles up with our stress levels, because A, we know we're not performing, B, we're not getting stuff done that we need to have done, and C, that might have a knock-on effect to work or in life generally. And poor time management, likewise. Again, I'm reasonably guilty of this. I'm always on the last minute, always rushing to keep up with things. I put that down to genetics. I would say my dad is the worst time manager I ever came across, and he passed that to me. It's probably nonsense. Actually, a lot of people who are constantly late, who are missing deadlines, again, these are things that will double your stress. Essentially, you're not able to manage your time, you're not able to be where you need to be and do what you need to do, and that's going to increase the stress that you're under. But it's also a symptom of stress. Again, those financial fallouts, companies are losing, and again, these are all statistics that you can look on the internet and have a billion different answers. But essentially, I think this was like the New Economics Foundation again, 6.5 billion annually to employee-related stress issues, or employee stress-related issues. One of the things that we do at Professional Help, as well as run the Safe Support and the Safe Care service, is that we run employee assistance programs for various businesses. And I can see now in lots of ways why businesses will spend so much money on trying to mitigate the stress of their employees. Because essentially what you have is absenteeism, people not turning up for work, presenteeism, people turning up for work and being pretty useless or actually being disruptive because they're very stressed and they're not able to contribute what they need to contribute. Are actually just people who cause chaos generally, and all of those things will contribute to companies not performing at their best levels. At the end of the day, the thing that makes most companies successful, most businesses successful, are their staff. And when staff are suffering, when staff are not able to perform, then clearly that's going to have an impact on how your business is performing. One survey, this is another one of those shocking statistics again to me, 33% of people said they always, often, or sometimes miss work because of stress. In my old job, we used to have something called, we didn't officially anyway, but there was something called duvet days, which I believe, maybe in the 80s and 90s, were a little bit more common in public sector life than they are these days for sure. I don't think you get away with it. But actually, it was a duvet day with somebody saying, I really don't feel that great. And if I come to work today, I'll be wasting my time and yours. So if it's okay, I'll stay home and take care of myself. And I'll come back tomorrow more focused and more able to do my job. Now, I'm not sure how many of us will get away with that these days. But it's something to think about, really, in that sense. Certainly with younger people coming into work and new work patterns, whether or not this is ever going to be acceptable in the fuel industry is another thing entirely. But actually, it's the level of flexibility that we're able to give people and the honesty that we're able to allow, I think, are quite important going forward. And I think as people in the funeral industry, we need to find a way of being as flexible as we can. Clearly, you can't miss funerals. Clearly, you can't miss deadlines. Clearly, we can't turn up when we need it. But actually looking at ways in which we can be flexible with people and give them permission to say, I'm not feeling great, I'm struggling, and maybe even take some time off occasionally. But 33% of people saying they always, often, or sometimes miss work because of stress. And 53% of them, which is a huge number if you ask me, and I would be horrified if I found out that my staff were doing this, 53% of people missing over 6 days of work per month due to a stress-related issue. And a little wobbly man at the bottom saying 77% of people regularly experience the physical symptoms of stress. That's a stat from something called Headspace, which is a mindful meditation app. Which, if you actually have 5 minutes free sometime this evening or in the next few days, I do recommend Headspace to you. It's something you can get on your phone or something you can get on your computer that will give you 5 minutes of meditation input to try and clear your mind and just give you a little bit of space. But one of their stats is 77% of people regularly experience physical symptoms of stress, which I think is pretty shocking, really. So how do we tackle stress? I think the first thing to do is by noticing that we're stressed. I think sometimes we mask the symptoms of stress, we ignore them, we bury our heads in the sand, we carry on regardless, we just try and get on with things. That's what we do. We're busy, we've got things to attend to, we've got other people to care for, particularly in the field profession. We have no time for this thing called stress. Problem being, of course, if we have no time for this thing called stress and we don't notice it and we don't pay attention to it, it does bite us occasionally. And so actually by thinking about your own symptoms of stress, your own signs of stress, what happens to you when you're stressed? How does stress manifest itself in your behaviour? How are you with other people? and have a go at noticing it. It's even quite interesting. I did an exercise a couple of years ago where I mapped my stress. So every week I would have a little stress diary. It was an academic exercise, but it was interesting in terms of actually every week, just in the diary, I would note how I felt that week. Was I busy? Was I stressed? Did I feel good? Was I positive? Was I worried? Was I anxious? And actually to map that over the year, which I think is an interesting experience in itself. To go back to what I said at the beginning, I do think at different points in the year we do tend to feel differently. If we don't have an underlying mental health problem, mental health goes up and down, and it ebbs and flows according to what's going on. So I think it's quite an interesting exercise to learn how to notice, to recognise our own stress, because only at that point can you think, this is getting out of hand. And before we get to the stage where we are suffering with insomnia, or actually having panic attacks, or in my case, I have a delightful condition where my hair falls out, and I'm not kidding, it's one of the very, again, unpleasant symptoms of stress that some people have. My hair does fall out from time to time, or has done in the past anyway. So by noticing what are our stresses, at that point, we can then begin to plan how we're going to deal with this. So, and then identifying the sources of our stress. Are these personal life stresses? Are these stresses that we're bringing on ourselves? Are we taking on too much? Are we doing things that are not good for us? Are these work stresses? Are these external stresses that we can't control, but we can plan to meet them head on? And by planning to reduce our exposure to stress, and again, not only by noticing that you are picking up some symptoms of stress and times where you might be feeling stress, by identifying the sources, where that's coming from and what's causing it, only at that point can you then plan to actually reduce exposure to it. Now, it's not possible, of course it's not, to reduce exposure to all stresses. Most of the most toxic stresses, health issues, family issues, sometimes are out of our control. But actually we can reduce our exposure to some stresses. And we need to think really carefully about the ones that actually we have got some control over. And that could be work. Is this the right job at the right time? Is it really fulfilling my needs? Is it paying me the money that I need it to pay to maintain whatever lifestyle I have or whatever bills I've got? Lots of different things that we could think about in terms of how we would reduce exposure to some of that toxic stress. And on the flip side of that, when we can't reduce exposure to stress, how do we improve our own coping mechanisms? You know, how do we look at how we respond to stress and actually build some resilience in there by taking good care of ourselves, by being proactive and planning to deal with stress, and really by reaching out to other people as well to make sure that we are well supported at that point. Are you all still with us? You're all very quiet. I'm going to ask you a question in the not too distant future, so I want you to start thinking about your own personal symptoms of stress. So, talking about workplace stress specifically. Now, I'm safe I've got a copy of these slides. I appreciate some of the smaller text might be a bit difficult to read. It's not too bad on my screen, but then I've got a really big screen. So some of the sources of workplace stress, you should be able to kind of go through these if you want to in your own time afterwards. Things like career concern, you know, am I going in the right direction? Is this what I want to be doing with my time? Is this the career that I'd hoped for? And is it the right one for me? Role ambiguity. I think this is a really big one in a lot of businesses, particularly smaller businesses, that we might come into a job and be asked to be a driver, be a bearer, be an administrator, and over time our roles change and they metamorphosize, and we get asked to do different things or more things, take on new responsibilities, and maybe because we work in small businesses we don't have that clarity of our role, that actually we can say I am doing my job. Sometimes when you're not clear what your job is, and your job is to do everything, and those of us that run small businesses or are self-employed will be well familiar with this. Sometimes it's very hard to say I'm doing my job well, because it's not always clear what your job is, and that can be a source of stress. Shifts, a classic source of physical and psychological stress, and unpredictability of work. Being called out in the middle of the night is clearly going to have some impact on physical and psychological well-being. I won't go through all of these, or else we'll be here all day and we've only got half an hour. Occupational demands. Most people say their greatest source of workplace stress is their workload. There are not enough hours in the day and not enough people to do things. And actually looking at how we take on additional work, or whether or not we should be taking on additional work, or who else might be able to help, and looking at our resources is really important when it comes to the demands of our jobs, and work overload is there. Again, one of the most classic forms of workplace stress tends to be lack of control, a lack of participation. So when you're not consulted, when you're not asked about change, when you're not told about changes, people pick up on them anyway, and that can be a real cause of stress in the workplace. Not that I'm sure any of you will be guilty of poor working conditions or providing poor working conditions, but we all know it's nicer to work in a comfortable, warm office, somewhere that you feel safe, somewhere that you've got access to refreshment, somewhere that you can step outside and have a breath of fresh air. Sometimes our working conditions are not as ideal as we would like them to be. Sometimes we're on the road for long hours, sometimes we like jump when we're on the road for long hours, sometimes we drive in long distances, so any people involved in repatriation will very definitely recognise that they're not the most ideal working conditions most of the time. So just being aware of how our working conditions actually impacts on how our feelings are working, whether or not these are causes of stress for us or whether we enjoy them, because different folks for different strokes and all that kind of thing. Some people love the driving, some people absolutely hate it. It is about you figuring out what are your personal sources of stress. Any conflict at work, people tend to find that pretty stressful, and organisational changes. We do a lot of work with businesses where people are being made redundant, and redundancy in itself is a horrible process. It tends to be very impersonal, and it often needs to be very impersonal, but it feels very personal. So those kinds of things tend to be your major sources of workplace stress. Again, it's a quick pop through because I've got vast amounts of time and I want to give some time for questions at the end. So very quickly, those who can type, quick, what are your signs of stress? I shared a little bit about the fact that I have a slight propensity to alopecia, so on times of acute stress in my life, I've had a whole chunk of hair fall out, and I'm also very inclined towards insomnia. So I know that when any of those, well, if the hair falls out, I've hit a bad patch, that's for sure. But actually with the insomnia, that kind of comes and goes. If workload gets too much, or I've got too much going on, I have 4 kids, as well as a husband who works away, as well as a business. So I can see things mounting up, and it tends to manifest itself in insomnia. So what have we got here? We've got Ronnie saying headaches. Yeah, that would be very definitely a fairly clear sign of stress. Make sure you're drinking lots of water. Waking up in the early hours, again, that's one form of insomnia, which is repeated waking up. Nicola, do you do that thing where you would wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. every day for a period of time? It drives you crazy. Short temper and stomach pain, absolutely. Eating, yes. Depression, yeah, that's for sure. That's when things are kind of getting to the stage where it really is impacting on your mental health, David. Tightness in the chest and not sleeping. David, I think we need to talk. Psoriasis, absolutely. In my younger years, similarly, I used to have a patch of psoriasis that only flared up when I was stressed. Increased levels of tiredness, absolutely. And that it's not just tiredness, it's fatigue as well. That feeling of just being heavy and really not feeling like you're certainly not leaping out of bed in the morning and rushing to the gym and cracking on like you'd like to, maybe. Nicola, yeah, that repeated waking up can get into a really, again, a vicious cycle, a vicious circle. It is very annoying indeed, and it's quite hard to break out of. And good sleep hygiene is important, but actually trying to address some of the sources of stress is equally important as well. And loss of focus, absolutely. I'm fantastic when my workload is heaviest at doing the most I can to be busy enough to avoid doing any of it. So, you know, I would have a set of slides to write, for example, for a webinar, and end up writing an organisational plan. And it's still productive work, but I'm actually actively avoiding doing the thing that's either stressing me out or is most pressing. I tend to have a lack of focus and scattergun my approach to do lots of other things instead. And so all of those, I think, are really good examples of people recognising what your signs of stress are, and that's a good step really in terms of how we then plan to recognise and mitigate some of those signs and symptoms. Thank you for that, that's really helpful. So we've got restless nights and eczema and low energy, absolutely. And I think hopefully we adopt a few of the strategies that we are looking at now, and you may or may not like some of these suggestions, or they are suggestions. Again, you have to find what's right for you. You know yourself far better than I ever could. And actually looking at and mapping out what are your sources of stress, what are your symptoms of stress, what actually makes you feel good, what alleviates stress, as long as it's not the bad stuff, what really alleviates stress for you, and then actually making sure we build in the habits to make sure we do practice those positive behaviours, and keep our eye on it as well. But if we stop thinking about these things, now I don't suggest you want to sit there all day thinking about how stressed you are, that will be a bit grim. But actually, when we don't pay attention to ourselves enough, I think we're all really busy, and I think we're all really busy caring for other people for the most part, and we don't pay enough attention to kind of what our gut feeling is telling us, what our behaviours are telling us. When we take our eye off it, it's very easy to slip back into some really negative behaviours. So the basics are as the basics are. Excuse me, those who know me know I like to talk, but not usually for like a full hour at a time. Setting the personal boundaries, I always think this is really interesting. And I think unless you really think about this, it's quite difficult to do. So setting your personal boundaries, you know, what are the things that are really important to you? And I'll give you an example. So I was talking to somebody the other day who said they will not accept phone calls after 9 p.m. at night at all. They weren't a funeral director, clearly. But actually they said no, the phone went off at 9 p.m, the mobile, and they didn't look at it again until the next day. Now, I couldn't do that in a month Sundays. But what they were saying was that this was really important to them to make sure that their kids' family and relaxation time was protected. And that was an absolutely set boundary. It wouldn't work for me, and it might not work for you, but it's an example of what someone's personal boundaries might be. Now, do you have work boundaries? Do you say, I am leaving at 5 p.m. on Friday, and I'm not on call all weekend, and I am leaving, and I need to go because actually that's what's right for me, rather than I'll just hang on and finish this piece of work, or I'll just make that phone call, I'll just tidy up here, or I'll just do that. Can you set any appropriate personal boundaries? Can you set any realistic personal boundaries? And then on the flip side of that, can you commit to maintaining them? So I set a lot of, for myself, a lot of challenges. I like to do silly activities. So some of you may have seen me walk the 3 peaks last year. The year before that, I did a marathon. Not quite sure what I'm going to do this year, but it'll be something that challenges myself. Now, it's not so much a personal boundary, it's something that I want to achieve, but it does require commitment to maintaining myself and working towards that achievement. So if you can't set personal boundaries, do you have targets that you want to set for yourself? Do you have something that will require commitment to maintaining? And if you can set personal boundaries around what's good for you, what's important to your family, what works for you in terms of managing work stress, commit to maintaining them. And the only way you can do that is by keep reminding yourself of them. Because again, we'll say, right, I'm not going to do this, or I am going to do that. And then within a week or two, we've forgotten. So the only way really to kind of keep on top of these things is to actually think about them, maybe write them down, and remind ourselves that these things are important to us, and we are committed to maintaining these boundaries or working towards these aspirations. I personally feel, for me, that it's more important for me to have a goal than it is to have rigid boundaries. I'm not a rigid boundary kind of person, but a lot of people are, and that works for them. Going back to what I said earlier on about turning down the volume, what is the noise that distracts you? Me, I will confess, it's my phone. My phone has virtually all my work emails on, 5 or 6 Twitter accounts, 5 or 6 Facebook pages, friends, family, amusement, memes, ridiculous videos, anything funny, diaries, calendars. I mean, you name it, it's on my phone. It is an extension of self as far as I'm concerned. But I know that I can spend at least as much time playing Scrabble against my husband as I can looking after my daughter. And actually the value is in looking after my daughter properly, not playing Scrabble against the husband, no matter how entertaining that might actually be when we're both bored. The volume, the noise that distracts you can take up a huge amount of your time and a huge amount of your headspace. And I think it's really helpful for us to kind of recognise some of that noise that distracts you and find ways of turning down the volume, whether it actually is turning off the phone or deleting the app that you find particularly appealing. Maybe it's the Candy Crush syndrome, spending hours kind of every spare 5 minutes that you've got looking at Candy Crush or whatever it is. Or maybe it is, you know, a relationship that takes up loads of your headspace, or people, or what I would call toxic people, who, you know, wind you up, leave a lasting impression that you might not like. Sometimes leaves a lasting impression that you do like, but isn't a good one for you. And so looking at what is the volume, what is the noise that distracts you, and finding ways of turning that off, even if it's temporary. Exercise, exercise, exercise. I know I bang on about this all the time. There are direct correlations between exercise and mental health. You might not like it, you might not enjoy it. If you do it often enough, you'll be resigned to it and you'll feel a blooming sight better for it. The worse mental health I'm in, the less exercise I do. And the less exercise I do, the worse I feel. So whatever it is, whether it's, I don't know, armchair aerobics, walking your dog, going to the gym, anything you can do. And put aside a time for it once or twice a week at least, just to spend that 15-20 minutes or more if you want, to do a little bit of exercise. I'm absolutely sure that the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more beneficial it is, and the more you enjoy it as well. There is definitely something to be said for moving in some way, shape or form, however works for your particular body. Again, sometimes people say to me, oh, what do you do for a living? And I tell them, and my brother in particular says things like, oh, you're a yogurt knitter. I get called all sorts of fun things, you know, you sort of airy-fairy yogurt knitting, counselling, therapy types. I don't think I'm particularly inclined towards yogurt knitting or airy-fairiness. However, these are one of the things that some people, I don't know if you've seen on social media recently, wellness, well-being has come in for some side swipes. People saying, you know, the Gwyneth Paltrow effect of people spending a lot of money on doing strange and wacky things and then claiming that they're all good for their well-being. I don't really subscribe to fad diets. I don't really subscribe to dry January. That would probably finish me off in January. I'm sure lots of people do, and it's very good for you. I think you have to find common sense, practical things for you to do. Now, mindfulness and meditation, you may or may not feel is right for you. I quite like mindfulness. I am rubbish at meditation, and I've been trying it for years. And we're actually lucky enough to have a Buddhist temple up the road from me. So I've spent quite a bit of time trying to get to grips with meditation. But I do find that my thoughts are what they call a monkey mind, pretty uncontrollable. The minute I sit there trying to clear my mind, it just has the opposite effect on me, and I start thinking about chocolate biscuits and what's for tea and goodness knows what else. It doesn't really work for me. Mindfulness, though, I like a lot. A lot of people don't know much about mindfulness, and in many ways it is just simply being aware of what it is you're doing and why. There are lots of really good mindfulness activities. There's lots of stuff on the internet about mindfulness, but actually for me it's more about not being absent-minded. We spend a lot of time on autopilot doing stuff that we either need to do or we usually do. We don't think about it. We don't think about the actions or the consequences of what we do, and we're not mindfully doing anything. But actually just thinking sometimes, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is this a healthy thing to do? Is this helping me? Is this helping my work? Are these things that, you know, just paying attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it, and just being a little bit more mindful, I think can be really quite helpful. Now, if you're good at meditation, I'm told it's superb. I'm personally just terrible at it. I am quite good at journaling though, and it's something that I've found for the last 10 years or so. Actually, what I can show you is that this is my journal. And I don't write in it very often. You can tell because you won't be able to see this, but it actually says 2005 in there. But I have been kind of filling in a couple of pages a month, on and off, for quite a few years. And actually looking back over the last few years of just notes or experiences, thoughts, I find quite therapeutic actually, and I think there is a lot of therapeutic value in writing down how we feel, because it makes it solid, it makes it concrete, it makes it something we can look back on and remember how we were feeling and why we were feeling like that and what we did about it. Again, going back to that, it's not just exercise, it's the whole, if you've got a dog, take it out. If you like gardening, lots of research around the therapeutic values of gardening. I personally have a ridiculously large, unwieldy garden, so I hate it. Golfing, got banned off the golf course, but the dog walking thing works for me. And actually, we do a lot of dog walking at work, which sounds like a real cop-out, but if we have to have a staff meeting, we do try to get the dogs on leads and have a staff meeting while we have a walk. Not every workplace can do that, I appreciate that, but if you can get out, you know, half an hour with your dog a day, I don't think you can beat that really in lots of ways. Again, it's all about virtuous circles really. Going on to eating good food, because there is a thing of we can have that instant gratification. We can eat the chocolate, you can eat the burger. Seems that Donald Trump's been doing a lot of that recently. But actually you don't tend to feel that great afterwards. It's a momentary pleasure that then has fairly lasting implications for how we feel and sometimes how we look as well, depending on whether or not you do the exercise. So actually there is a virtuous circle to be had in terms of eating reasonably healthy food, having a fairly varied diet, and just, again, being mindful about what we're putting in our mouths. Now I'm smiling because I went on a mindfulness eating course about 18 months ago, which was possibly one of the funniest experiences of my life, because there was actually a tutor who said she kind of demonstrated and would say that, so this is the water, this is good for me, it's going to hydrate me, it's going to make me feel better, so I'm going to say to this water, thank you water for hydrating me. Now that was a bit of a step too far for my taste in being mindful, but actually eating the good food, you know, maybe not, you know, a salad first, that's fine, but a few vegetables here and there, maybe a little bit less red meat, or, you know, whatever will work for our own personal bodies, and our own dietary needs. Leaving off the mackies is never a bad thing. Again, laugh being the best medicine. I think there's some truth in that saying, laughter being the best medicine. If we can find entertaining things to laugh at, if we can laugh with other people, preferably not laughing at other people, but actually laughter is very, basically, is essential really to our well-being. And again, the rest and relaxation, however you can take your time to yourself, please do. Whether it is you've got a Kindle and you spend a couple of hours reading, you sleep as much as possible, you know, you get some of that time back to yourself, taking your weekends or taking the time off that you can have. And it's been a revelation to me for the first time in 20 years, or since I was at university. I had a month off over Christmas. I had all of December off, which was terrifying in terms of I run my own business. It was exhilarating in terms of I left my business with my staff and they did a wonderful job. But only after the first couple of weeks was I able to not do anything and just enjoy being with the family, enjoy spending time, did a lot of reading. Normally I take work reading, work writing, I do my emails, I ring people. I almost never don't work when I'm on holiday. So actually to take a month off, it took me a couple of weeks to get out of working. And it did help that it was over Christmas. But actually, that extended period of time, I think, did wonders for me. And it's something I could certainly commend to you if you ever get the opportunity to do it, Dave. Taking time for something that you enjoy doing, whether it's, I don't know, an exercise class or yoga or painting or wine tasting, within reason. anything that you enjoy doing that actually makes you feel good about yourself and doesn't have any particularly toxic implications. Reducing the drug and alcohol use, and again, it doesn't have to be serious alcohol use or serious drug use, but actually again being mindful of the things that we are putting into our bodies and just saying, do you know what, this year I'm going to cut back a little bit. Whatever it is that we rely on to get us through the day, recognising that and having a look at how we might find different ways of getting through the day without the drugs and the alcohol or whatever it is that is our personal poison. Reducing your exposure to toxic situations and people. I think this is really important. We all have those people, particularly in our lives, that really stress us out. And sometimes we can't avoid them, but actually what we can do is minimise our exposure and also minimise how we take people on. And actually, again, being mindful of the fact that I know this person annoys me, upsets me, winds me up, whatever it might be, fishes me into unnecessary arguments, whatever it is. And actually trying to reduce your exposure to those people and those situations. But if you can't reduce your exposure, recognising what those switches are and how they wind you up, or whatever it is that they do, and being mindful of how you respond, because you will feel better about yourself if you plan how you're going to respond and do it well. And of course, the thing we'd always say is if you feel you are suffering, if you do feel like you're going down, I mean, if I had a pound for everybody who rang us and said, I don't feel myself, that's usually a really good sign that you're struggling. I don't feel like myself. Or if you don't feel how you want to feel, if you do feel that horrible lethargy, if you feel that weight, if you persistently symptoms of stress, I think it's always really helpful that there is help out there. Obviously, safe support is something we'll talk about briefly, and get that help when you need it. Interestingly, 80% of chronic illnesses are caused by lifestyle-related issues. We can do a lot to mitigate our own stress. I'm not going to kind of go through this because it's quite complicated and it is a little bit airy-fairy. So hopefully, once Safe have sent out the slides, you may want to download them and have a careful look at this because it's in very small text and even my eyes aren't that good. But it's a quite well-established self-care wheel which gives some suggestions around the various areas of life: psychological, emotional, spiritual, personal, professional and physical, and some of the things that you might wish to consider as being important in the self-care sphere. So I won't go through this at the minute. You can have a look at that in your own time. Some things you would just think, what? That's ridiculous. But actually some things might resonate with you as well in terms of thinking, yeah, that's something I really neglect. And I think the message really is that life is a balancing act. So if your self-care wheel is wonky, your bicycle's not going to ride very smoothly and you're not going to be able to enjoy the ride quite so much. Couple of exercises for you, and again, these are all they'll be part of the slides. Please download them and try them out, get other people to try them out. This is one I particularly like. It's very simple and it's quite effective, so much so that it's I did this a couple of years ago. I went back to it recently to see what had changed, and it was quite illuminating. So just taking 10 minutes to look at these 3 circles with you, with work, with family in them, and making a list of which people impact on each circle and what activities go on in each of these circles and what you do at work, what you do for yourself, what you do with family. And then allocate a percentage of time that each of those circles consumes. Now I can tell you for sure that in 2016 my work circle consumed about 75% of my time. And family at probably the other 25%, or definitely the other 20%, and mine was 0 virtually. And it didn't work for me very well. I wasn't particularly happy with that, and it is easy to recognise actually. I was spending far too much time worrying about the business, building the business, running the business, getting the staff on board, finding the contracts, delivering the work well, and actually it had a huge impact on my personal health and my sense of self and my mental health, and it was plain as day when I did that exercise where the problem was. And the questions to ask yourself really are you happy with how you are spending your time? Now your answer might be, I'm not at the moment, but it will change. And if you can see that change and you can anticipate that change and it has a time scale, then that could be okay. But the question is, are you happy with how you're spending? And I think the clue's in the question there. Spending your time. This is your time and you choose how you spend it. Clearly there are lots of external influences on what we do and how we do it, but these are our lives. You only get one life and you have to choose how to spend your time. So figuring out what's important to you and how you choose to spend that time, I think is really important. And if you're not happy, what would you like to change and how can you plan to do it? And also what the time scale is, because things don't often happen overnight. I find it really interesting to go back to this a couple of years on, when actually the balance is a little bit better. I think the U circle comes and goes depending on the other demands. But actually I'm more mindful of the fact that I do need time for me. I need time for the things that I find pleasurable, that sustain me, that keep me going, that mean I can give more to work and family than I would otherwise. Here's another a little exercise that you might want to try. And there is a lot of research which shows that actually our mindsets, particularly something called a growth mindset. If you wanted to Google a lady called Carol Dweck, a DWECK, done lots of research around how mindset impacts on life generally, really, on our outlook, on our mental health, on our achievements. So this exercise is around your values, and starting by really defining what your values are. What motivates you, what drives you, what guides you. What would you do if you could choose without restriction what to do every single day for the rest of your life? What's your why? Why are you here? Why are you doing what you do? And I think this is an important question for people in the funeral profession, because it isn't an easy business. It isn't an easy job. And caring for people, other people constantly does take a lot out of you. So what is your why? What are your values? And then highlight maybe the top 5. You might have more than 5, you might have less. Your top 5 most important values. And then think about what each of those values looks like and what the behaviours associated with those values. So an example might be kindness. And then thinking about what does kindness look like to you? So to me, it looks like being compassionate and considerate and nurturing and caring towards others and to myself. For me, kindness looks like talking less and listening more, which is a bit rich considering I'm talking at you for an hour. And also showing gratitude more often. Again, with wellness, you will hear sometimes people talking about gratitude, practicing gratitude. So every night you count your blessings. Do you know what? It's a really, really positive thing you can do, is to think about the things that you are grateful for and that you can anchor yourself to when times are tough. So thinking about those values will ground you back into, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I behaving the way I'm behaving? Are there other ways that the real me, the me who can be unfettered, who can be free to be the best me that I can be, are the things that I can do or be that would work better? And actually thinking about your values, I think, can be really helpful in bringing ourselves back to why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. Your beliefs and values drive behaviours. Even though it's spelled wrong. Building your mindset on your core values, and if you do build your mindset on those core values and you think about them, there is a very good chance you will see some of your behaviours change accordingly. So that's another little short exercise that you might want to try. I'm going to skip through some of these because I'm conscious of time. I can winter for ages. And in lots of ways, the whole creating your wellness plan it's part of the whole. It's all of the things we've talked about around recognising our own feelings of stress, our own symptoms of stress, our own sources of stress, and then the plan to mitigate it is yours. In that sense, once you've got all of that in line, actually, is there a journal? Is there a diary? Is there an app on your phone? I assure you there are lots of them. Is it as simple as literally writing 4 boxes to cover the areas of your life that you're particularly interested in, and writing down 2 or 3 actions that you might take to improve your emotional health? And that might be to go for a walk. My current one, and it's physical as well as emotional for me, is to walk at least 5 kilometres a day. I can walk it, I can run it, but I have to move it. And I have a treadmill in my office, which makes my life a little bit easier. And I've got the big wide Lake District to get out of and a couple of Labradors that need walking. That to me is something that is going to improve my physical fitness, and it gives me a little bit of headspace. So just simple things, maybe 2 or 3 things under each of the areas that are of concern to you to create a plan. You also might want to do things like, I've just put that the cover of that book on there. There are vast amounts of literature on the internet, loads and loads of books. Self-care books, I think, are probably the biggest selling genre that there is at the minute. And some of them are good and some of them are less good. But maybe read a little bit about emotional and physical well-being. You may or may not wish to do the airy-fairy stuff, but the practical solutions, and most of them are just not rocket science, most of them are common sense. But there are solutions that, there are mindfulness exercises, there's literature that you could read if you wanted to. And very quick indeed. A healthy habit tracker, again, it depends what works for you. My whole 5K a day thing is part of a set of healthy habits. One is eating less toast, and I'm not being flippant about that. I eat vast amounts of toast with butter, and that's got to stop. So I'm going to limit myself on the toast. I'm going to walk my 5Ks or run my 5Ks every day. And I've not decided on the third one yet. And you can have as many healthy habits as you want, but it's very helpful to track them. So I'll be tracking my 5K through my pedometer on my phone, because I'm addicted to my phone. But however works for you is actually making a note of those habits and making sure you stay on top of them. But giving yourself permission if you fall off, every now and again, and it doesn't happen one day, not to worry too much about that, because good habits take practice. And when you practice good habits, they become a lot easier and second nature. So that's another little sheet you might want to try. And going back to the whole workplace stress, how can you help your staff? Very obvious things, looking back at those causes of stress, what can you do? And talk about it. Talk about stress to staff members. Make it okay for people to say, I'm really struggling, or this is just a really difficult patch for me, or I need some help. By talking about stress and feelings and emotions, that actually makes your workplace a much safer space for people to share their concerns. And if people can be open, then we can address things without that opportunity to share what's bothering us. It's very difficult to find solutions. And by being, I'm sure you all are, caring and open-minded, and having that supportive culture at work. And it's something that I do see all the time in the funeral profession. People are very caring and they are concerned, and we look after each other. Sometimes we can be a little bit busy, a little bit pressured, and sometimes we don't have time to do some of this stuff. But actually by nurturing that supportive culture, we make it a lot easier for people to say what the problem is and find that help. By maybe going through that wheel, the major causes of stress at work, and actually thinking about your staff members and thinking, are any of these things appropriate to our workplace? Are any of these things an issue for us at the minute? And whether or not there are any changes you can make to alleviate any of those that you can spot. I think as people who employ other people, or even people who are self-employed, I think if we spend a little bit of time thinking about the issues that are affecting us at work, then it gives us the opportunity to do something about it. If you bury your head under the sand for long enough, things will go awry, that's for sure. And then really the last thing I'm going to talk about today, and it's going to be super quick because we're going to get cut off any second, is about safe support and the fact that we have got a supportive service to offer you. If you or your own staff members are suffering with stress or any other issues that you feel would be useful to talk about, would be useful to get some input into, maybe even some counselling or some advice, by referring staff members to safe support, please ask them first or tell them first, but you are very welcome to refer directly your staff members and encourage them to refer themselves. And safe support, if you've been in a hole for the last couple of years, safe support is our support and care service for all safe member organisations and their staff. Anybody over the age of 18 can access the service. We will support any problem that's affecting performance in the workplace or any life stresses that are affecting people and stopping them doing their jobs, essentially. We have a helpline where you can ring up just for a chat, for some advice and some information. If it's something that's bothering you and you want us to find some information for you, we can do that. We'll point you in the right direction. It might not always be our organisation that helps. There may be better placed organisations that could help you. There's email support. A lot of people find it easy to contact us by email to start the conversation as a really good opening gambit, if you like. And education and training about emotional wellbeing, stress management, and this kind of thing. We also provide up to 6 sessions of confidential counselling by qualified counsellors. And anybody who's used the service, I hope, will tell you that our counsellors are very pragmatic, they're very human, they're kind people, but also very skilled. So up to 6 free sessions of counselling, whether that is face-to-face or over the telephone or by webcam like this, that you would have the opportunity to chat with a counsellor. And we have a very solution-focused approach. So we look at what the issue is, we give you the opportunity to figure it out and find ways of supporting you. We do offer a crisis support service, so God forbid anybody ever has a major incident at work. We do see them from time to time in the funeral profession where something particularly difficult happens. If you need to offload, if you would like a debriefing session with a member of staff or with a counsellor, just maybe a one-off session to get off your chest what's happened and how you feel about it, we can do that as well. We can refer on to other agencies. We have no waiting lists at the minute, so you won't be hanging around for weeks and weeks waiting to see somebody or to speak to somebody. Just pick up the phone and talk to us, that's what we're here for. And I think hopefully we've proven by now, we've been doing this a little while, 3 years now for Safe Support, that we will provide you with the highest quality of care and service standards. So what do people come to? Again, you can have a look at this in your own time. People ring me up, somebody rang me up last week and said, do people come with any other concerns than workplace stress? And I said, oh yeah, most people don't come, what happens to family issues at the top, but most people, workplace stress is a part of the whole. That actually there are lots of things that go on in people's lives that then impact at work, and again it can coincide with workplace. There might be something going on in the workplace as well, but we are there to support any issue that is bothering people. And that is the telephone number and the email address for Safe Support. If anybody wants to speak to me, you're more than welcome to call that number or email Safe Support. Or give me an email on the catherine@professionalhelp.org.uk, or Facebook me, or Twitter me, or LinkedIn me, or anything else you want to do. I hope that's been reasonably helpful. I appreciate it's a fairly quick trek through with a lot of content. The idea of some of these slides is that you can take them away, print them out, share with people if you want to, have a go at some of the exercises if you want to, but ultimately, have a think about how you plan to improve your mental health in 2019. It's going to be a stressful year, especially Brexit. And it's, you know, there are lots of things that could come over the horizon that provide challenges for us all. But actually by planning to meet them, then hopefully we can all get through this year and the years beyond, feeling mentally well, physically well, hopefully, and really engaged and able to support the families that we work with. I'm a little bit over time, so I'll probably get short, but if anyone has any questions, now is the time to type them, or you can just ring me up afterwards. That'll be absolutely fine. There's no sign of anybody typing. Anybody want to say anything before we finish off? Oh, very quiet. I've not bored you into submission completely. These slides are with Safe at the minute. Hopefully they might put them on the intranet or they might email them directly. I'm very, very happy to email them to you myself. It's quite a big file, it's about 3 meg in the file, so if your email will stand it, I'm more than happy to send you them by email or Dropbox or however you want to get them, if you want them. But I hope that was helpful, and if it wasn't helpful, I hope it was interesting and gave you a little bit of food for thought about protecting and maintaining our own mental health and our staff members. Thank you very much, Nicola. It's nice to hear from you, and I hope you're keeping well. And Anne as well, who is another mental health expert in in our midst and runs mental health first aid training. If anybody wants to access that, she is over in East Anglia, I think Norfolk way from recollection. And is always a good person to talk to about mental health issues as well. I hope it was thought-provoking. Yes, we will definitely send you the slides, and just pop me, lots of people have me on Facebook or on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it is. Just pop me a message if it can help with anything, and tell people about Safe Support. Make sure you've got the leaflets, we've got leaflets and flyers and little cards, that if you want them for your staff, just let us know. Okay, I'm going to end it there because we're a little bit over time and I'm sure you've got things to do. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your attention. Hope I didn't go too fast. It's sunny where we are right now, so I'm just going to go stand outside for 5 minutes and cool down. Thank you all very much.